Sharon, shall we go to you and you want to tell us about what was it again? No, yes,
The
the English.
English.
The English. Now, okay, now I'm interested about this because when I heard about the English and I heard about it and I heard like Western TV show is a little bit like it's a little bit I've heard it's quite well not bleak but stark and has like bursts of violence and everything like that. I thought this should be right up like Western right up Sean and Sharon Street, bleak, a little bit violent, like that should be right up Sean Street. So I'm actually interested about this. I'm really interested about this. So Sharon, tell us about the English.
Yeah, the English, it's yeah, a Western. It's set in 1890. So towards the end of what we think of as that classic Western period where um, all the sort of the indigenous tribes have not been shoved onto reservations. There's still a little bit of angst going on. But the story is an English woman, Emily Blunt, has gone to America to right a wrong. And as the story progresses, you understand that the things you assumed at the beginning are not true, and that um, everything becomes revealed eventually, and you do discover what this wrong is. But initially, she's on this mission to right a wrong, and she has heard that the person who has caused this wrong to her and her son is in this quite remote um, ghost town almost. There's like a really rickety old hotel, it's like a coaching station before the railways. And so it had seen better days. And it is run, and she arrives there with basically two saddlebags full of money. And she wants to use whatever means necessary to actually enact revenge against this person who wronged her and her family. And when she arrives at this awful place, run by Kieran Hines as this Sotalia, and with Toby Jones as her wagon master. She finds it's not what it seems. It is bleak, and they have got this a former army scout basically tied up and looks like he's going to be hung. And as she goes to investigate why are they doing that, this is basically he had this brown man had the nerve to walk into their bar and ask for a drink, and so he was then beaten and tied up and strung up.
That's Chaske Spencer,
That's Chaske Spencer.
he's Native American.
He's Native American, yes, and he plays a
Yeah,
Pawnee who was he was a sergeant in the United States Army, and he has basically served his sort of 20 years in the army, and he's just going to head home. And as a veteran, his dream is that as a veteran, he's entitled to basically buy a homestead, and
yeah.
his dream is that he's earned it as a serving member of the armed forces. So he's going to go back to his home state of Nebraska, where the Pawnee were from, and he is going to buy himself or get himself a homestead against all odds. And these two unlikely sort of allies come together where she sees him in this situation and she thinks, I'm going to go and see if I can help him. And then she becomes clear that the reason she's in this situation is not what they seem, that these people she's met are not honorable, and that they basically mean to rob her and do her harm. And he reluctantly basically comes to her aid after a little bit of toing and froing. And then she comes to his aid. And so they form this unlikely alliance, and where he reluctantly again agrees that he's going to escort her part of the way on her journey so she can seek out this man who's going to hurt her. Who hurt her. So it then gets complicated. But basically, in a sense, it is a revenge story. She wants to right this wrong. She's going to, by whatever means possible, she is going to seek out the man who hurt her. And so the next episode is basically like a bit of an odyssey, where in each episode you meet a different cast of characters. There's only a couple of recurring characters in the story who become irrelevant. All the others are people she just like encounters, a bit like, Odysseus, who meets these different people that symbolize different things. So in one episode, you've got the Hotalia, who means to sort of rape and rob her. Then you have like a bushwhacker gang. You've got a group of Eastern European pilgrims who are like Mennonite, who's going to set up their own community. She sort of encounters them. She encounters this sort of a ranching community. So she meets these different people, and each different episode reveals a little bit of the past, what's led her there, and she has some sort of like this sort of violent catharsis where she begins to understand herself better through obviously this violent situation she's been in. So there's a lot of violence, that people get shot. There's a threat of violence where people are obviously she's a woman on her own for some of the film, and so there's obviously that peril.
Yeah.
And there's some interesting characters. The Rafe Spall's in it. Tom Hughes is in it. As I've said, Kieran Hines and Toby Jones. There's quite an interesting British cast lurking in the background of nearly every episode.
Yeah. Oh, so obviously, Sharon, you've done really well. So like skipping around and giving us the essence of this without giving any spoilers about this. So because and another reason, Sean, why I think that you might like this, from what I understand, it was shot in Spain.
Yes.
So it was shot in Spain, doubling for like Montana or something like that. And so, well, I know that it's not quite spaghetti western, but it's kind of like a similar kind of idea. And but when you mentioned this whole thing about like a woman going through an area that has like European settlements and all, it's giving me real feelings. And this is a week where Tosin just compares everything to everything else. I'm not sure if you guys ever saw the film The Nightingale. That was set in
I saw that.
Sure. So that
that's good.
It's a very good film.
Them fellas, I like the way they call them that. That's
There's an element of that because obviously at the heart of the story there is this Pawnee man.
Yeah.
And there's one of the themes behind it is like different people seeking revenge and for different wrongs that they want to right. And one of the side stories that overlaps on her seeking revenge is the treatment of a particular village. I don't know which tribe it was, whether it was, I don't think it was Pawnee, but it was a tribal village. There was something awful happened, and that has repercussions that sort of echo through time and has ripples that spread out and affect all these different characters in different ways. So you do see that treatment of the indigenous peoples and how sometimes they were treated as if they were an inconvenience and not as people. And so when people are treated like an inconvenience, then sometimes there are repercussions to those events that happen maybe years after the actual event. So you do see the repercussions of this sort of event that affects all the other characters either directly or indirectly, but it affects them all in different ways.
I'm going to try very hard to bite my tongue and stay off my colonialist thing, because as you guys have, as I've mentioned before on this podcast, that the older I get, the more colonialism just sort of like looms large in my head, and I started reading into everything. And this is very, very obviously that, but I'll save my colonialist rant for something else we'll talk about later.
I can see it on your face. I can watch it as you're starting to build up.
So Sharon, you were going to say, did you start saying you like?
I like the way this was constructed as well, because I get a bit tired of this modern convention of starting in the middle, then going back to the beginning, and then skipping back to the middle, then skipping ahead, and then skipping back. And I was like, just tell the darn story. And so sometimes you want a beginning, a middle, and an end. Sometimes it's like there's nothing wrong with having a beginning, a middle, and an end in that order. But actually, this one did start in the middle. But as you understand her more, you begin to see by them going back into the past, and you see how these events in the past shaped her. In this instance, I didn't mind the way it's constructed, that you have the middle, then you flash back to the beginning, and then it carries on sort of more or less in a linear manner. But because normally I just start about the wall, but this time I thought the way it was constructed and the each revelation came at a good time where you went, whoa, and it does make you rethink some of the things you'd assumed, or you have a tendency to fill in the gaps where a lot of people we all see films and we read and we know the conventions of modern fiction, filmatic as well as sort of literary. We know that when someone has a story of revenge, you tend to fill in the pieces without being told anything. You tend to think, I expect it's because of this. And then as they give the revelations, each revelation makes you appreciate it even more. So I think it was really well constructed and well written, because I think there's a lot of the big why people do this sort of jumped about storytelling is because it's pure laziness. It's to create a bit of drama, because if you told the story beginning, middle, end, there actually would be. It's not that interesting.
You very quickly realize there's nothing here.
There's nothing there. So this is the way they jumble it up. But this one, I think each revelation is interesting, and you sort of go, wowzers. So there's some of the final revelations you're going, wow, that I hadn't seen that coming. And I thought it was really good. So I actually really enjoyed it.
How many stars?
I would give it a 4.
4
Easily a
stars.
4.
4 stars
But
for
yeah,
the English.
all the cast were good. Taske Spencer was just not that like the noble savage. He was like flawed. He was human. He was like a real man. I thought that was really good because often you can get two different types when a sort of a Native American man is portrayed. They can either be like the noble savage, they can be like a sort of almost like superhuman or super sexy or whatever. But he's like very very human, and I just thought, yeah, the writing it's very good to sort of
bring
humanize people when you could just fall into the fact that he's got the pointy hair and he's dressed in a certain way. You can fall into a certain trap, and it's like no, they've portrayed him in
and he
a
says
way.
things like big wampum or stuff like that. So,
Wow.
yeah.
They didn't fall into those traps, and the fact that he was articulate. It's like he's quietly spoken, but he's articulate. It's like he's not speaking in pidgin English. It's like, why would he? He's been in the army for 20 years. So I thought it was really well done.
Yeah, you would hope that. We hope with the quality that obviously seems to be behind this, they would avoid a very easy pitfall to avoid. So